Hello and welcome to this morning's episode of Trending. My name's Gareth. I'll be joined shortly by my friend Richard Willett. As always, this show is brought to you by the brand new range of Ickonic coffee. Head over to shop.ickonic.com and use the code TRENDING and you'll get 10% off. I don't know why I'm speaking so fast. Richard, how are you this morning, mate?
I'm good, thank you, and don't call me shortly.
Do you know
Every
what?
time.
I find myself like Smashy and Nicey at the minute where I'm literally trying to speak really fast and then I look back on myself, I go, why are you speaking so fast? Why does everyone speak so fast? But there you go. Anyway, first story, Rich, let's crack on. Nordstream. That was kind of, the explosion of Nordstream. It was one of those things that it was quite big for about 15 minutes and then it sort of disappeared, which I never really understood because obviously if you look at Nordstream, the gas pipeline coming out of Russia into Europe, which supplied a huge amount of Europe's energy infrastructure, being blown up, sort of quite a big deal, really. In fact, it's essentially, declaring war on Europe by destroying a large portion of its energy infrastructure. They tried to blame it on Russia, if you remember, which was, of course, ludicrous because the one person that's not going to blow up Nord Stream is Russia because, of course, they were using that as leverage against Europe. All these sanctions were being put on Russia after the invasion of Ukraine. And actually, that's an ace up your sleeve, isn't it, Nord Stream? Because it's kind of like, well, you can put those sanctions on if you want, but I can then just turn off the pipeline to Europe and make Europe go dark. Why would they blow it up? They wouldn't. So, of course, that was the narrative for a bit, Rich, wasn't it? And then even the most mainstream were like kind of, all right, yeah, we can't really make that stick because that's so ridiculous. And then you had the former Polish foreign secretary, who I think is now part of the EU Parliament, showing a picture of the explosion of the bubbles coming up in the middle of the sea, saying "Thank you, America" or "Thanks, Joe Biden," words to that effect. You can't really blame Russia if you're doing stuff like that. Then they went into panic mode for a bit and went, oh no, it was a separatist group from Ukraine. It was the Ukrainians, but we had nothing to do with it. It was nothing to do with NATO. It was nothing to do with America. No, sorry. That wasn't believable either, Rich, because they just didn't have the wares to be able to do it, basically. Because where the explosion was, where the pipeline was attacked, was up in the Baltic towards kind of Denmark, Sweden area, up towards Scandinavia, where it's hella deep. And actually, there's an area not far off the coast of Germany, really, where it's a lot shallower. So if you're a separatist group and you don't have the wherewithal that these huge military juggernauts have, you'd pick the shallow bit, really, wouldn't you? But they didn't. They picked the deep area. Now, this story broke overnight from 21st Century Wire. It's from a guy called Freddie Ponton, who's done quite a lot of an awful lot of analysis on Nord Stream for a while now, and he's basically been looking at different things, and it's very similar to you, Rich, in terms of when you're looking at the flight logs and stuff, this whole Epstein thing, which is delayed, and then it's coming out next week, probably delayed again, all that nonsense. And what you've been saying was actually everyone's focused on the flight logs. What they need to be doing is looking under the surface, looking at the submarine bases and that kind of stuff. This is probably a bit of a diversion. It's the same with Nord Stream. So what everyone's been doing is they've been basically looking at the GPS and they've been looking at radar of what was going on the surface, with the assumption that actually Nord Stream was blown up from something from above, whether it be, a series of vessels or one vessel that would drop a bomb or whatever, or divers, which never really made sense because of how deep it is. Now, what this guy, Freddie's done, is gone like you. He's gone, right, well, okay, I think that's a distraction. Let's have a look what was going on underneath. And so he's done quite a lot of analysis that way, and they've looked at the effect on the seabed around Nord Stream and in the area. And to cut a very long story short, because it is a very, very detailed piece in 21st Century Wire, he's basically saying that he believes it was the Swedish and the Danish, so NATO, combined, and it was submarines. It was a big military operation, basically. He's like I said, he studied all the data. He's looked at seabed activity, and it points towards this, which would be a bit of a game changer, really, because if you blame a rogue Ukrainian group, then it's a country at war. They're a rogue group. They're separate from NATO. Our hands are clean. We can't control what everyone does. Whereas suddenly, when it becomes a military operation coming out of Sweden, Denmark, and he does allude to some involvement from Finland as well, then that's NATO. So that's huge, and that's essentially an act of war against Europe. You've got 3 countries in Scandinavia destroying the energy infrastructure that comes into Germany and then would go off into various parts of Europe. That's quite a big deal, Rich. I don't know what your take is on that, mate, and why. Well, I was going to ask you why the mainstream's ignoring that, but that's a ridiculous question.
It's a fascinating one, isn't it? I think when we come back to this is that this cult don't work by countries.
No, they don't.
That's a terrible way of wording it.
They don't have borders,
they don't.
Rich, but I got
They
what
don't
you're
have
saying,
borders.
mate.
Yeah, they don't have borders. So you could say Finland, and we use these terms, Finland and all these other countries. But actually what we're seeing is a faction within NATO that probably doing something that the other guys have no idea about. So it's really difficult for people to understand that when you don't talk about a country or Russia or the US, you also automatically think about the president or the prime minister at that place, and you think, oh, it's them, their group. Actually, there's factions within them. So as I go on about the Chabad a lot, you can see the connections there with Putin, Zelensky, and Trump quite clearly, because this is a faction within each organization. So when you have, oh look, Elon Musk is taking down the FBI and CIA. Well, no, they're just getting rid of the ones in there, the good ones, that would pull them up on these things. So it's not the system, and it's not the country, and it's not the organization itself. It's a faction within it, which is Sabatinism. They go in and change it within. So the reason, as you say, it has to be a military one. It's submarines. I mean, me and you haven't got a submarine. So, well, I don't know about you, but this...
I've borrowed Ghislaine Maxwell's before, but I had to give it back.
Yeah. And she left Stephen Hawkins in there, which was just like, this is awkward.
Just harsh.
Yeah, it is. The fact is that we don't, obviously it's a military operation, but it'd be a faction within the military that's doing this operation. So you look at black budget projects, and then you look at the whole outcome, and you've got to think why. And it's a constant attack on the West, and that's what we're trying to point out at the moment. There seems to be an absolute concentrated attack on bringing down the West to replace it with another regime, a technocratic regime. So that would be a faction within NATO, not NATO itself. And that's where it gets really kind of difficult to know who's doing what. I would suggest that if you want to find out, ask them about Israel. Do they support Israel? That's usually a good sign. But, you've got Zelensky and Putin, both Chabadniks. So this isn't as clear cut as anyone thinks. It never is.
Also, I think, when people play enemies, like, they don't necessarily have to be playing enemies, because you can look at someone like Starmer and Trump and you think, well, I think Trump's probably quite a good actor, to be fair. Starmer, not so much. So, I think there might be a little bit of needle between certain world leaders. There may well be needle between Putin and Zelensky. But the fact is, they're serving ultimately above them. They're serving the same team. And people find that quite difficult, I think, to get their heads around. But even if you bring it down to a real base level, bring it down to a Sunday League football team level. I've played in Sunday League football teams with people that I thought were complete arseholes, right? And they thought the same about me. And they were probably right. But you still played together in the same team. You still passed to each other. You still served the team because the team was what it was all about. So you can actually despise someone, but actually still serve the same agenda and still work towards the same goals, which is what's happening with these world leaders. And I think that's something that people kind of struggle with, because they're like, yeah, but you can see they don't like each other. It's like, yeah, but that's fine. But look at what they're doing in terms of to their own countries or how they're reacting to certain things. They're all moving in lockstep, whether they despise each other or not. They probably can't stand each other, but that doesn't mean they're not serving the same team.
Well, to use your football analogy there, like if you get yourself in a position within the team to allow yourself to win, so say you're the goalkeeper like you were, and you just get a little whisper in the ear, say you step aside at this point in the match, or so-and-so will happen. There's two things going on there in your mind as psychological as a human being. You want to not get punished by your masters, but you also don't want to be seen to be the one who let the team down. So there's that battle. There's two battles there going on with these politicians. There's their public persona, and there's their what they're being told to do in the background. It's your turn to take the fall. It's your turn to be the scapegoat. And they're like, well, I don't want to, So you've got Fauci now, his turn, Bill Gates' turn now. This is what happens. So it's never cut and dry like that. So they're on the same team, but the outcome is far more important than the team players.
Absolutely. And that's, I believe, Rich, that's where your compromat comes in, because that keeps people in the box. Because if I've got someone in my ear saying, right, in the goalkeeper analogy, when that guy shoots, step aside and let the ball in my head I go, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm actually not going to do that, because suddenly I've gone back into, self-survival mode. I quite like my lifestyle. I don't really want to be the enemy on the front page of everyone's newspapers that everyone hates. So no, I'm not going to do that. And then, do you remember this?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, there's a camera in every room. Talking of cameras in every room, it's a bit of a tenuous link. AI, Rich. We speak about AI most of the time. That's because it's everywhere. Every time I get in my car, and bear in mind, I've got a sport radio station on, and they have their little segments of news on the hour. AI is always in the news because it is clearly meant to be. It's meant to be taken over, Rich.
Yeah, it's absolutely everywhere now. And we have to talk about it because we're talking about what's trending. I mean, that's what we're trying to stay away from Trump today. So we're talking about AI. Universities warn to stress test assessments as 92% of students use AI. So this is the self-efficient cybernetics, which is the study of whole systems complete. You're actually getting AI training humans to respond to AI to pass their tests to get where they are. It's a compliance test again. So British universities are warned to stress test all assessments after new research revealed almost all undergraduates are using generative AI, artificial intelligence, in their studies. A survey of 1,000 students, both domestic and international, found there had been an explosive increase in the use of Gen AI in the past 12 months. Almost 9 out of 10, so 88% of the students in the 2025 poll said they used tools such as Chat GPT for their assessments, up from 53% last year. So students are relying on artificial intelligence. But instead of saying, we're going to ban artificial intelligence and your use of it, and we're going to find some way of finding out that you've been using it, which is quite obvious sometimes, we're going to pare down humans and say, oh, it's all too much for you. Oh, it's too stressful for you. We're going to make the assessments much easier, so you don't need to use AI. And that's what they're doing. They're paring down the intelligence of humanity and human being to reach the level where AI can take over, because we're all a bit stupid in 50, 60 years to come. There's a famous film out there, isn't there? I can't remember what it's called now, but they're all a little bit simple, I think I'll use that word, and therefore technology can take over. So they're saying AI is going to outthink humans. Well, if you just pare down the human being and their ability to learn, and they rely on AI, of course they are. But it doesn't mean the capability of human beings isn't far beyond AI, which of course it is, and always will be. But that's the element behind that. It was really interesting. It wasn't, look, we're going to try and stop students from using AI and get them reading books and other things. It's, let's just make the assessments easier so they can carry it. They don't need to use AI. It's bizarre. Well, weird way of thinking.
They've been doing it for a while. I mean, for me, Rich, when I hear you explain that news story, I kind of look at it in two ways. I think, one, they're making tests easier. They're dumbing down the population. I mean, they're dumbing down the population with what they feed the population and what's allowed to be fed to the population and what they put in their veins and all that kind of stuff. That's one level of it. I think this has been going on for a long, long time. In fact, I would suggest this has been going on for 100, 150 years. I remember, and if anyone at home remembers this, or even if you don't, have a search. I remember finding I think it was a Victorian, or maybe it was a little bit later than that. Maybe it was 1910 or something. A test from a British school, and it was basically your access test to secondary school. So bog standard, really, your bog standard test. And I remember, I mean, I don't consider myself an idiot. Some people watching this might, but I don't. But I remember looking at this test and going, geez, like it was really difficult, like next level difficult. And I was like, kids today wouldn't have a chance with that, like no chance at all. And then I look at tests that I did when I was a kid and things that I learned, things I had to pass and whatever. And then I compare that to what my brother had to pass, so 11 years younger than me. And then I compare it to, what my niece and nephew had to pass, and then even what my kids looking at now. And I'm thinking, you can see it doing that. Like, you can visibly see it doing that. That's not to say there's not very intelligent people in all of those ages. That's not what I'm saying.
Of course.
But you can see it doing that to dumb down the population, of course. The other aspect of it is this AI thing. It just goes to show, like, so it's up from what? 50% to 88%, nearly 90%, right, in terms of the use of it. So what these people used to do to pass their tests, to do their exams, was they would study the news. They would study, archived news stories, depending on what subject they were doing. They would study books in the library and stuff like that. And so you'd have a subject, say, like history, which, again, you can split history into two, and it's his story. It's someone's version of reality still. Well, now that version of reality comes from AI. So that's where people, like we spoke about it a couple of weeks back, that's where people are getting the news from now. People are getting their information from AI because no one trusts the mainstream media, rightly. So they're getting their information from AI. Well, who's putting that information into AI? Who's controlling AI? You know, we spoke about it earlier in the week, just the fact in terms of vaccines and autism. The fact that there was a search in Grok AI, do vaccines cause autism? It was a categorical no, not a chance. There's no connection. And when they did a deep dive and looked at the stories and the articles and the peer-reviewed studies that it had cited to come to that conclusion, the four main studies which show a causal link between the two wasn't included in that. So it's almost like AI is now selective. It's like it knows its narrative. It knows what it's meant to be. So it goes, oh, I'll ignore that then, which is no different. AI is basically the editor of the Daily Mail.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
It's cybernetics again. It's changing the system. They're plugging you out from your own intelligence and common sense into this AI system, and that becomes your godhead. And we had the same thing like 100 years ago. You had two different levels of education, and you go back to the mystery schools, and you had this understanding of the way the world worked, how reality worked, the elements. The fifth element was also just chucked out as well. So there's two levels of education there. Well, this level of education is going to be rewriting the past. It's AI. It's plugged straight in. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's two sets of AI in terms of their AI and the common man's AI. But this is absurd to look for a computer. And obviously we all used to do it with calculators, with numbers, but this is obviously very far more, I wouldn't even say advanced. I would say degenerated from simple maths equations. People are reliant on this stuff. And my niece and people, I've heard them, young kids talking about using AI for their assessments all the time. And that is really, really worrying because it's just telling you the truth. And even on a for want of a better way of putting it, on a quantum level, when we look at these, look at the protons, the photons, and we know that when what you believe becomes almost true, it changes what you see. So if they're rewriting the past, there is an element on a quantum level that actually changes the reality. And they know these things because they're through the mystery schools. They understand the elements and how reality works to a certain degree anyway, but they don't understand consciousness. We have an effect on our reality, and that's been proven on a quantum level that what we perceive to be true will turn up as. And I mean, that's far more complicated than that. But if you take that into the AI, if the AI is programming what you believe to be true, the AI is creating a world of its own. It's a very dark road to look down, but it's fascinating. But we are relying on it, and you can see 20 years time, these young kids will be relying on this. And you see adverts now, halfway through a YouTube video, you see AI becomes your best friend. It'll talk to you and it'll hear your problems and that and record them and send them to the police. But yeah, you know what I mean? You see that narrative playing out already. It's your best friend. It will never leave you. I think it was, I can't remember who the chap was who said that. I think it was Androsine said it will never leave you. It'll always be there. That's creepy.
It's very, very creepy. I don't need AI there, if that's okay. Thanks. Appreciate it. But you're right. Absolutely. It rewrites history. And then what people do is they start to question their lived-in experience. And to be fair, we saw it with COVID, didn't we? Where people's lived-in experience was this is all nonsense, but the BBC said it wasn't. So they went, well, they wouldn't lie. Well, they might. I think they might. And I think that's probably
and
what
then they went out and lived it.
Well, exactly. And I think that's what a lot of people think that this Mandela effect is. I mean, that's an interesting theory and a conversation in its own. But how much of the Mandela effect is actually, no, it did happen the way you remember it. It's just it's been memory hold and it's been edited in terms of, oh, really? Because I could have sworn, well, yeah, you're right, that did happen, but they just rewrote it and went with the whole David Brent, they won't remember, attitude. Right, this story, Rich, this comes from Big Brother Watch. Now, this is part of a series of legislations that the Labour Party have pushed through or are attempting to push through that we've spoke about in this show over the last few weeks. And the overriding theme is basically lack of freedoms, mate, and lack of privacy. Remember, you'll have no privacy, you'll have nothing, but you'll be happy. So the headline says, breaking, 50 million Brits' driving licence photos could be used by police for facial recognition searches. I don't know about you, Rich, but when I got my driving licence many, many years ago, I didn't get that driving licence and take that driving licence photo to give the government permission to use it in facial recognition, but here we are. More than 50 million Britons hold driving licences in order to travel and have not given permission to the government to turn our photos into mugshots. The Crime and Policing Bill allows the government to grant police officers extraordinary powers to identify and track anyone with a driving licence at the click of a button. Not only would this be an unprecedented breach of privacy, but it would also put innocent citizens at risk of misidentification and injustice. And of course it would, because this facial recognition, hark back to the last story, will be powered by AI. Now, we've already seen how AI gets things wrong. We've seen it in Gaza, where the Israeli Defense Forces have basically shot people's heads off because they've been identified as someone by AI, and they weren't actually that person at all. So another innocent civilian dies in their house. Now, it carries on with powers to ban. This is an addition to it that's in this bill. It would give them powers to ban face masks at protests and the introduction of new categories of warrantless searches. So basically, the police can come into your house without a warrant. Now, people will look at the face mask. Well, why should you be wearing a face mask at a protest? Well, I don't. But then, you know, a lot of people work in industries or have employers or have family members that completely disagree with their particular view. So how many people would go, say, to an anti-immigration protest, you know, open borders, I'm against that. So they're there, there's, you know, they're chanting, but they're not saying anything wrong. They're being completely peaceful. Fine, they're entitled to do that. But if their gaffer at their job is a radical leftist, open the borders, let everyone in, come on, it's gonna be great, then they may well lose their job, or they may well miss out on that promotion, or they may well be punished or shunned in the workplace. So these people might want to, you know, I want to be part of this protest because I feel passionate about it, but I can't afford to lose my job because I've got mouths to feed. So there is you know, that to take into consideration in the same way as why whistleblowers remain anonymous. I can understand that. I would love it if everyone was open and frank and who they were, but life doesn't work like that. So obviously you add this bill. Now, bear in mind, this was a bill that the Tories were trying to push through, actually, and it was pushed back. It was fought back. Now, we've spoke about this before, where they try and push the uni party, because they're both the same, try and push something forward. You push it back a bit, like they're doing at the moment with the CAN bill, with the Climate and Nature bill, and and then people go, oh, we've defeated it. We've won. Woohoo, let's all go down the pub. Well, yeah, but they're going to come back. And this is what they're doing now with Labour. Now, if you couple this with the what we spoke about earlier in the week, the data use and access bill, which the Labour Party are trying to pass through now. They've gone to the House of Lords first to get permission off of one parent before going to the House of Commons to say, look, they say it's okay, like you do when you're trying to get sweets at the checkout. That, of course, gives permission for financial surveillance, and it gives the bill gives the Treasury and Financial Conduct Authority expanded powers over your financial data. They can find out where you're going, what you're spending your money on, and all that sort of stuff. And it also, with the use of AI, gives them a bit of a kind of almost like a pre-crime sort of prerequisite kind of thing, where it basically says, oh, I think you're going to be poor in the future. So even though you've got money now and you've got a job now, I don't like your opinions. I think you're going to lose your job. I think actually you can't have this mortgage. So it's very intrusive. So that's one. And then, of course, we spoke about before where the government have done this huge crackdown on benefit cheats, which everyone celebrated because, good. Why should they sit at home on the backside with all the money watching telly while I'm working hard? But actually what this bill gave the government permission to is to go into your bank account without a warrant and take money out of it. That's not just going to be used on benefit cheats, is it? And just finally, Rich, because I'm aware I'm probably rambling, what you hear in response to stuff like this, when we highlight this, is, well, if you haven't got anything to hide, why are you worried? Right, you hear that all the time. Why would you cover your face? Why would you be bothered about having your license photo used as facial recognition? If you're not breaking the law and you're not doing anything wrong, then why does it matter? Well, one, your privacy should be your choice if we live in a free country, which is what we keep hearing. I mean, it's not true, but we keep hearing it. But the other thing is rules change and laws change, and what is socially acceptable changes over time. So now you might be sat there winning, going, well, I don't break any rules. I think Starmer's great. But in a year, that might not be the case. 10 years ago, women didn't have penises, right? I remember it well. I hark back to those good old days. That's quite a big change. That's quite a big change in 10 years, isn't it? That a female has sort of grown a phallus suddenly. And so I say that to people that go, well, what, if you're not doing anything wrong? Well, if you're not doing anything wrong now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're not doing anything wrong in 10 years by doing exactly the same thing you're doing now. And also, if you stand up to the state, these can give them the powers to target you, any dissident of the state. That's Orwellian, and that's frightening, actually.
Obviously, AI makes mistakes all the time. It's actually not as intelligent as we've been sold. It gave 2 left feet to Musk yesterday that Trump was having a nibble on. So we know that these things can't be relied upon. They can be programmed. But as you say, the facial recognition stuff is it's absurd. Like it goes way too far, and it's all going to feed into this whole biometric ID situation. And you say there's like pre-crime, there's past crime. Malay even put a system in place, another Habanik, that was looking back into your past to see how probable it would be that you would cause a crime in the future. So there's no room for redemption, for changing. How many times have people done stupid things in their 20s and their late teens that they would never do in their 40s because they've grown up? You learn from your mistakes, so there's no learning from your mistakes. It's just do as you're told. They call it a techno-monarchy. I'm writing about that this week in Classified, techno-monarchy, which really is a global corporation when you look at it. And that's what they want. They want one global corporation. So you're going to see this cult as the corporation, and all its rules, its 7 Noahide laws, are going to be pumped through this AI technology and fed back, this biometric ID. So you can see this slipping in place. Why people are not up in arms about this is beyond me. And it's been sold to them as, we'll keep you safe, there'll be no crimes. No, everyone will be a suspected criminal. Therefore, no one will do anything outside the laws that this cult have set. It's a completely inverted world. There are where the criminals are in charge. I think I sent you, I posted it last night. Aristocracy, which is a great name, great word. And it means basically the least among us that are suitable are put in charge, which is politics, basically. So it's a great word.
Perfect.
Yeah, Ed Miliband, yeah. All of them. Every single one of them.
Yeah, all of them.
Every single one.
Exactly.
Yeah. Every single one of them are most unsuitable to be in charge. So this AI system is part of that, and it's dripping out very, very, very quickly. This stuff is coming together, and people, as you say, it's not all done in one, because people will be up in arms. It's done bit by bit, totalitarian tiptoes, your dad calls it.
Well, it's a sales pitch as well. I had it this morning as I was driving in. Again, like I said, I listen to a sports radio show when I drive in, and they have these news updates. And then the main story was the fact that now through AI, they're saying they can basically diagnose kidney disease years before they could normally by analyzing people's eyes, and they can see certain things and capillary. I can't remember the exact terminology, but it's something within the eyes basically that would tell them what's going on inside years before they would normally be able to diagnose kidney disease. Now, on the face of that, that's amazing. That will save people's lives, but it's not the reason for it. That's the sales pitch. That's obviously what gets the jackboot in the door. You're going to have lots of people now going into, well, I might have kidney disease and I don't even know I have. I'll go and book myself an appointment. I'll go and have an eye scan. They're talking about this once a year. You go every year, once a year, to have your eyes scanned. Ooh, okay, so then it's all part of this biometric system. And suddenly those eye scans are now on a database that can be used in your social credit score. We have to allow
even
the
on a
wolf in the
deeper
door.
level. Yeah, even on a deeper level. And I just quickly just go back to what I was saying about quantum physics then. If what you believe, you perceive becomes true, if you're planting that seed that you're going to get this later on in life, is that not affecting you on a quantum level to get that later in life? Remember, these people understand this stuff. They're very, very demonic. So that they understand that they can give you the idea that this might happen. You have the same thing in prophecies. You have the same thing in end of the world stuff. Is planting that seed that later down the line you're going to get this. And not only so on a physical level, you go and you'll spend money on examinations and you'll get your mRNA jabs and all that. But on a quantum level, we know that what you believe affects you. And it might take a long time and it has to be a big belief. But if you're putting the power of suggestion in someone's mind that you might get this later on, how do we know on a quantum level that isn't creating it? I believe that it is. The more I look into this stuff, I think we're far more powerful than we've been led to believe. And the fact that they can change our beliefs, whatever they program into your mind, does have an effect down the line. So I think it's something else that we need to be aware of and start looking into, because these guys understand that on a quantum level, that they can affect your future by suggesting things that are going to happen. And I think that's really important to bring that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people can go away and study this, even in terms of that. There have been people out there that have been given a terminal diagnosis, a period of time to live. They've died within that period of time. They've had an autopsy and they never had the condition in the first place. The power of the mind is incredible in lots of good ways, but it also has its negative impact. And I think COVID was that. People might be a bit short of breath, might feel a bit under the weather. Tell them they've got a deadly virus that's going to kill them. They'll be in hospital in no time. In the same way that if I make someone believe I've poisoned their drink, they will suddenly start to be breathless or suddenly start to hold their chest. I've done nothing to their drink, but it's that power of suggestion. And it's happening to us every day. Talking of power of suggestion, babushka, 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 wow, wow. What does that mean?
Kashka.
It's Kate Bush.
Yeah, she did a song called Kashka at one point. It's the only thing I know about Kate Bush.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
She likes gardening.
Kate Bush normally. I like Kate Bush's music, old school music. I think it's cool. And I think in the old days, she was a bit of almost like you'd call a freak, but I like freaks. So, when everyone was acting a certain way, Kate Bush was like, oh, mate, what is she on? But I like that.
Yeah. I'm going to run around the woods making really high-pitched noises.
Yeah, but who doesn't do that, Rich? But this story is quite amusing.
This is brilliant. This is where we've got to in clown world. So you liked her music, didn't you, Gaz? You liked the instruments. Her voice was beautiful. She was an incredible singer. You liked the sound of her music. Yeah. Kate Bush and Damon Albarn among 1,000 artists on Silent AI Protest album. Not even a fart, Gareth, on that album. Not even a fart. Literally, there's nothing on it other than the sounds of the studio. So more than 1,000 musicians who are not playing any musical instruments, including Kate Bush, Damon Albarn and Annie Lennox, have released a silent album in protest against UK government plans to let artificial intelligence companies use copyright-protected work without permission, which obviously we agree with.
I agree with
as a celebrity backlash builds against the proposals. The recordings of dormant music studios. Brilliant. It's just the sound. Just the sound. She just left the mic on and gone and made a curry. It's just absurd. And there's 1,000 have put their names towards this nonsense. And performance spaces. So they've recorded dormant, just empty spaces. So the album is called Is What We Want? Are being released as leading cultural figures warn livelihoods are under threat from proposed changes to copyright law. Now, AI isn't going to give you an album of silence. I understand what they're doing. I obviously agree with what they're doing, and it's drawing attention to this, and I get that, and it's really good. But it's also hilarious that we've got to the point where they're releasing an album of silent studios, and people will buy this, sitting there going, I like this one. This is my favourite. It brings back memories of sitting on my own, no one talking to me. It's just ridiculous. And, imagine we've been called up for that. You'd put a little fart in there, wouldn't you?
That's the bit that's making me laugh. To be fair, in fear of sounding like an old fart, I'd probably rather listen to that album than most modern music, actually. But at the same time, what I want to know, right, is whether these people have just put their name to it. So someone's gone, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the mic open at Abbey Road Studios for like 45 minutes. Some people will come in and out, a couple of creaking doors or whatever. And Damon Albarn and Annie Lennox and Kate Bush and the rest of them have gone, put my name to that. Which is what I assume's happened. But then I
think that's what's happened.
How funny would it be if they all actually turned up? Like they've flown in from all over the world into the studio just to sit there.
Oh, well, like We Are the World. And they're all just standing at the... Yeah, they're just standing there, like a gaggle of them. And just like, Quincy Jones is going, and 1, 2, 3. And then Bob Dylan lets out a little cough. And you have to start again.
Bob.
He's always off key. That Bob Dylan. And it's
himself,
amazing. He really hasn't. And Paul McCartney, Elton John, ABBA's Bjorn Ulvaeus, the actor Julian Moore, and authors, because you can have actors in there because they don't need any musical talent because it's a silent album.
Yeah.
So, jugglers as well. And there's an author in there. Writes for a living. He's on an album, musical album. Val McDermott and Richard Osmond are among the celebrities have called for protection of their work from unlicensed use by tech companies. And we agree with the principle of it. We understand it draws attention to it. But it is hilarious that Planet Earth has got to this point now where we're recording silent albums. How would you know, Gaz, if you would even put it on? You would just press it and you go sit there and go, did you press it? Did you press play? I did press play. Has
it been released, Rich? Or is this like a press release saying we've made a silent album as a protest and that then obviously highlights it? And I'm with you, mate. I agree. Like... someone's creative property is their creative property. I hate when people steal stuff off people. That's wrong. It's parasitic. But have they actually released it? So can I go on to, say a Spotify or wherever else you get music from nowadays? I don't know. Like I say, I'm an old fart, and actually download it. And are people doing that and paying for it? And if they are, where's the money going?
I think so. The music-free album. Imagine we're in a world where we've got a music-free album. It's like saying I went to the gallery to see the canvas today.
Do you know
There's
what?
No
they could, if that was in Tate Modern, they'd sell that for about 20 million quid a blank canvas, and it'd be like, oh god, you see how amazing he's been. He's kind of what a genius.
He's allowed you to bring your imagination to paint it in your mind yourself. He's just provided the canvas.
Do you know what's funny?
Wow.
I went to a modern art gallery once, right? And I was with a mate, and I remember I stood there and I was looking at this piece, and it was, I don't know what it was worth, but it's worth what someone wants to pay for it, I guess. But it was a lot of money, and I was like, that's mental. I was like, I could do that. And my mate Ben went, well, why didn't you then? Sort of got me there.
Yeah, it's a fair point. It is good luck to them. The music-free album represents the impact on artists' livelihoods if the government pushes ahead with its plans, according to Ed Newton Rex, the British composer and former AI executive behind the idea. The government's proposal would hand the life's work of the country's musicians to AI companies for free, letting those companies exploit musicians' work to outcompete them. It's a plan that would not only be disastrous for musicians, but that is totally unnecessary. The UK can be leaders in AI without throwing our world-leading creative industries under the bus. The project is a protest against the government's proposal to let AI firms train their algorithms on the work of creative professionals. We completely agree with this. But yes, Gareth, you can buy this. The album contains 12 recordings. How would you know when you went from one track to the next? Are we on track 3?
I'll be honest, Rich, right? I quite like it. I like the idea because obviously what AI will do is it will trawl the whole entire database of musicians. So every guitar riff, every vocal harmony, every key change, and will train itself to do that. And you can see where this is going, that nothing's real. You're basically going to end up with Milli Vanilli, but it's AI with a couple of plonkers dancing like that, pretending it's them, but it's all AI. That's where it's going to go, where everything is AI. Because you don't have to pay AI, do you? If you think about it, BMI Records or Sony, they don't have to pay royalties to AI. They don't have to give AI an advance so it can go off and record an album in the Maldives. They don't have to do any of that. So it's again just concentrating all the profits and all the money into the pockets of those that have absolutely no creativity anyway, because it's all being done by AI. So I get the message.
No,
I just think it's funny.
yeah,
that it's selling
absolutely
a
get the
silent
message.
album.
It's just funny that we've got to this. I completely agree with the efforts behind it and what they're standing up for. 100%. Of course, I agree with that. It's just funny that we've got to this place in the world. And as your dad says, and many of us say, look, do not comply. If we don't use the internet, we don't plug our systems in it doesn't work. It's feeding off us. I completely get that. But we still got to this crazy point where 1,000 musicians have released a 12-track album of silence. This is where we are now, people, in the world, and you can get that. So yeah, you're right. People have just put their name to it, sponsored it in effect, but it's 12 tracks. I love that they split it up. It's not a concept album. They've just got all the way through. They've split it up into tracks as well, which is brilliant.
Yeah. But you'd have to do different tracks, because if you had like a 50-minute album and you get to like minute 49 and the juggler drops the ball, do you know what I mean? That would
start
be
again. Who gave Bob Dylan the juggling things?
Yeah, don't give that to Bob Dylan. Well, that's an interesting one. I'm actually going to go now, Rich. I'm going to go and download that album. I'm going to listen to it on repeat. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, it's basically the sounds of nothing. It's the sounds of nothing. But if anyone out there actually downloads the album and let us know what it's like for you, I suppose it'll be different for every person that downloads it.
Of course. Well, Simon and Garfunkel have already done it, haven't they, with The Sound of Silence? But this is just a rebrand. But great to talk to you, Rich. It's always nice to see you. It's you and my brother Jamie tomorrow, isn't it? On Friday on Trending. As always, today's show was brought to you by the new range of Ickonic coffee. If you head over to shop.ickonic.com and use the code TRENDING, you get 10% off. And who knows, it might not have any coffee in it. It might be an empty bag in protest at AI. We'll see you tomorrow. See you later.